Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Noor Podcast. Today's going to be an exciting conversation, I'm sure. Unfortunately, today we do not have a guest, which I think came down to a little bit of difficulty communicating with people, but I think a little bit of poor planning from our part as well. But we will be working on that to improve it. But following on from that, we would love to have people reach out to us, because as much of an exciting job it is for us to reach out to these wonderful and very successful professionals within their careers, within life, and their own journeys, sometimes it is a bit of a let's say gravel pit for us to try and work through, and everyone's busy, but if you are a individual that is successful, that is, let's say, successful in terms of just doing well in your life, and you have a very interesting topic that you would love to discuss with us and share with the world, or if you know anybody that fits that category, then please refer them to us, and we'd love to get them in and have a discussion and create a wonderful episode.
Yeah, I was just saying before that a lot of value that this podcast brings is to people. A lot of young people say, I don't know what to do with my life. But yeah, we want to get people in that have kind of found that fulfillment and purpose, and share what they do with the world. Because I think it can help a lot of people that are currently going through that journey of trying to figure out what to do.
And the other thing that, when you mentioned success, I think you need to define the success, what success means, because at the same time you can't expect someone at early 20s become really super successful, because they might just be at the beginning of the journey. Okay, so to me, at least, for someone who has an aim in life and they are targeting and trying something in their life, something meaningful individually and for the greater good for the society, that means success, means they have found their purpose, their meaning in life.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do, because based on part of the reason that we don't have a guest today, because we reach out people and people are freaking out and say like not really, being comfortable to actually come and talk on the podcast, because they have this sort of like a bubble that success means, I have to be a billionaire, to come and talk about my journey, which is not. Okay.
Yeah, we want to just hear from people. There's a lot of jobs and a lot of roles, and a lot of what people do is unknown. And yes. I think getting that knowledge out there would be very valuable.
Correct.
And just mindsets and how people think.
Yes.
We want to know how, like, different people and how they are. And,
we want to explain to our audience that how the society is being running. Okay, and what people are having an influence on running our societies and how important they are, so people can understand the process of why the society is functioning the way it's going and how they can actually come and contribute to it.
Yeah.
Especially young people, because they are the workforce. They are the ones that are going to create, I don't like to say change, because change doesn't necessarily mean good, but make a positive impact moving forward. Okay, that they can actually bring value, to the greater good. So that is was part of the challenge when we were talking about the people. And what you're doing now?
Yeah.
Vision?
So today's episode, like Ali said, we don't have a guest. So you're just stuck with the three of us. But what we're doing, and what I thought would be interesting, is that we all know about Jordan Peterson. He's a psychologist and a professor in Canada, and very famous. Look him up. So he wrote his first book, which is called The 12 Rules of Life, which he summarized 12 rules essentially that everyone should follow to get their life together. If I could say like a quick thing, what that book is about, it's pretty much it. And I asked my best friend ChatGPT to give me 3 questions based on that book. And I told her that we're recording a podcast, and I wanted 3 questions that will help us to kind of break down who we are and answer that question about how we think and our mindsets. Now, these questions, we haven't read it yet, so you're getting the initial reaction.
Yep.
And how it'll work, I think, is that, so we got questions 1, 2, and 3. And for the first one, I can go first. And the second one, Ali, you can go. And the third one, Mark can go. Initially answering it, and then we can all give our answer afterwards.
And can you explain to the audience that probably don't know Jordan Peterson in that depth, why Jordan Peterson? Why not a different psychologist or author or something like that?
I don't have an exact reason why Jordan Peterson. I'm more about the book as well. I personally, I really do enjoy his content. I think he asks that question of what is the purpose of your life, or find an aim in your life. And it's, I guess that kind of reflects what we're trying to do here today. And if anyone hasn't read the book, I highly, highly recommend it. So he's written 2 books. So the 12 Rules of Life, and then I think it was 12 More Rules of Life. I found the second one is very technical, like psychologically technical. There's a lot of terminology that he uses. It's so I tried to listen to it as an audiobook, and I could not follow it along. I had to stop it because it's just too much. It's like a textbook, but it's gold. Like it's a really good material.
Absolutely.
It's very thick though.
And so by doing that, we are trying to create a framework for our podcast, more like for the guests that we want to bring to the here, so they have more understanding of the meaning of success when we are asking people to kind of actually talk. And when Ali asked, we are more than happy if people come and talk to us and they want to share about their journey. That will be, that creates a groundwork about why we are doing this. What's our purpose?
Yeah, awesome.
It's all yours now.
Okay, so the first question is going to be this. All right.
I think
who's going to answer that?
If you're the one that's going to be answering it,
You should ask me.
I think I'll ask it.
Ask me the question.
Okay.
You're going to have to give me some time to
You
think
didn't
as
read
well.
it, did you?
No, I haven't read it yet.
Good.
Okay.
So question 1 that ChatGPT has brought to us from the book is rule-inspired questions on personal growth. So in Rule 4, Peterson advises, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. How do you personally measure your growth and success? And how has this approach impacted your personal and professional life?
Okay. All right. So it's how do I measure my growth and success
Without comparing to anybody else.
Yeah. Okay.
I must admit, it's a difficult question.
It really is.
It is a difficult question.
Well, I can say that for myself, and I think I've talked about this previously, is I think success and growth in what I do is very much correlated to how much value I add to the world. I'm not saying that because I want to sound like a philanthropist. I genuinely think, and I do care about money. I do want to make money. But I think people are paid money for the value they add to the world. And the more value, somebody once said, the harder problem you can solve, the more money you get paid. And how I measure it, and I think it also says in the question about comparing yourself to who you were yesterday. It's an interesting one because I'm just gathering my thoughts here, so you gotta bear with me for a second. But I think I have a unique point of view in this one because for myself, I don't really set goals for myself in terms of growth and success and, what I want to do, what I want to be, let's say 5 years down the line. And this year for me has been a really big reason and really big validation of why I don't do that. And that's because, this time last year, I just started my graduate program with Boeing, and I was a grad fresh out of uni. I mean, I always knew I wanted to do something interesting and something cool, but if you told me that 1 year from the future I would be running a podcast and be, directing a nonprofit organization with already an event successfully done and planning, multiple other things, like I would not have believed you. Like I would literally there's no way that I would have believed you that would be happening, because at the time my goals and everything that I kind of forecasted for myself is an extension of my present, not actually what the future is. If you really think about setting goals, you're trying to extend your present, you're forecasting, but you have to have a baseline, and the baseline is what your present situation is. And no part of my present situation at that time, which is a grad 1 month into a graduate program at a defense company, I would not have thought, this much can come out of that at all, ever. I didn't even know what a nonprofit was at that point. And it proves to show that I think there's some ways that you can make goals that are valuable, but for me, having a solid plan is not. And I think what I've learned from that journey over the last year is that I want to always be able to make myself available to accept opportunities as they come. Because that's what happened with this podcast and with Degsa, is that I was able to poise myself that when the opportunity arose for something to start, I was ready to take it, and it's little things. And I think this goes back to Jordan Peterson's book as well. He has this infamous quote in the book, which is like, I think it was like anyone who wants to change the world, first go clean up your room. Like that's the first thing you should do. And I think someone else once said something else, was like, everyone wants to change the world, but nobody wants to wash the dishes, and I think for myself that poising myself to accept opportunity has been things like organizing my finances and being able to having control over it instead of it controlling me. Organizing my health and my fitness routine, organizing my work so that, a lot of people go to work at a 9 to 5 and they're so exhausted by the end of the day that they don't have the capacity, energy wise, to do anything else. So they need to just relax to be ready for the next day. And then I think the last one would be organizing my sleep, which I think that's probably the hardest one for me. I've tried so many times, but I need to be able to sleep on time. It's one of those things where when I do sleep on time, it's so obvious that the benefits, but you get to the next day at nighttime and just like, it's 5 more minutes on the phone.
Wasn't there, I think last week, the week before, there was a discussion we were having before the podcast where I think you spoke with somebody that said the comparison of life expectancy and essentially
shift
workers and having somebody that has a set schedule of this is the time they're going to go to bed and this is the time they're going to wake up.
Yeah. It is the number one highest, the number one most accurate indicator, essentially a bio indicator for a successful, well-rounded life in terms of your health is wake time. Yeah.
And what was the difference in that life expectancy? 15?
So that was for shift working.
Okay.
Yeah. So shift working was 15-year decrease in life expectancy, which was insane. And actually, I think, correct me if I'm wrong. Actually, you can't correct me right now, but I'm pretty sure if this is right.
People will leave comments.
Leave comments. Let me know if I'm wrong.
Go and search.
But shift working is actually, or working night shifts is listed as a carcinogen on the Australian Cancer Council. It's either the Australian Cancer Council or the Global Cancer Council, because genuinely they have been able to have a measured increased risk of cancer just if you work night shifts, which doesn't make it, because it's one of those things where correlation doesn't mean causation. It's not the night shifts that are causing the cancer, but I mean in some ways it is, but it really does negatively impact your health. But anyway, answering the question, it was I don't really set goals for myself. Just being able to be ready and poise myself in the other aspects of my life so that when something comes, I have the capacity, I have the money if I need to invest something into it. I have the time that I need to invest into it. I have the energy to invest into it. Yeah, let's go. And same thing with the podcast. It happened. It was a good opportunity. So I'm like, yeah, let's do it. I have the time, the capacity. And also being able to know that I didn't stretch myself too thin. I don't want to overcommit and then not being able to follow up. But
I guess based off what you just said, I must say I love the way that you put the fact that you've created a sort of structure for your life, for everyday life. I think having too much structure in every aspect of your life is for me personally, the way I view it, it is quite limiting, because you set a parameter and you say, okay, these are the goals that I'm going to reach, and I can't go beyond these. And I think that's what a lot of people tend to be quite risk averse. Opportunities can come through. They might be a bit high risk, but also high reward. And if you don't look at, if you look at a lot of people that have quote unquote been successful, it is purely the fact that they have taken those high risks and they haven't allowed themselves to be so conformed to one specific goal and specific structure in life. So I really like the fact that those mundane tasks and those things that you do on a day-to-day basis, I think is very important to have a structure. Okay, I'm going to do this first. You know, you wake up and I think there was someone that I heard speak on, I think in another podcast or elsewhere, that they said it's so important for the first thing to do in your life is to make your bed, because that is the first goal that you're going to achieve for the day, and that's going to set your mindset up.
that was also Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, to continue getting goals, because it's that dopamine. You feel so good because, say for example, you haven't, I guess, made your bed for quite a while, and whatnot, and then you start, like the whole time you're like, I really wish I could just get up, have the energy, have the motivation to make my bed. And when you do that, you're so motivated, I think. And that's for me, like I'm talking off of personal experience. There was such a long time where I didn't do that, and then it got to a stage where I take things to the extreme. So then I would wake up, make the bed, vacuum the bed, and everything was set, vacuum my room in the morning, and then I stand there so like just hands on hips. I'm like, I'm so good today. And then the rest of the day goes so well. But having definitely that, I guess, structure for the mundane tasks, and especially with money, I think a lot of people forget. The way I see it is they mix money into being a big problem and a small problem.
Okay.
Big problem in terms of they only think of the $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 expenses, but they don't realize those small, minuscule, let me get a coffee here, take an Uber there, or let me buy another shirt, or this and that, right? Or let me eat out. They don't realize how detrimental that can be to their financial life and how much stress it can cause in other aspects. So having that structure to that as well, and allowing yourself, I guess, a certain amount to spend, and then obviously from there being quite strict on yourself and being very, I guess, I don't know what's the word. It's again sticking to that routine.
Yeah.
And from there, it allows you to not be so scared of spontaneity, because if you allow every other aspect of your life to be spontaneous, then you never know what the outcome of that is going to be. And then if lots of bad things keep happening and you keep forgetting to do things, then you're scared of spontaneity in every regards. You're scared of having anything go out of, quote unquote, the way you expected it to happen. So I really think, and the way that you've done it is great. And I hope that other people can sort of follow along with that and add the structure to their life, so that when big opportunities that are spontaneous, you can really take the time and seize those opportunities. And just as you have, I mean, like you said, a year ago, for me, it's hard to believe that you didn't expect yourself to be achieving these things.
I didn't expect myself. I didn't know what I would achieve is the right way. I knew, like, I'm not stupid. Like when I am sorting my life out, essentially, when I'm making my bed or cleaning the dishes or making my, whatever the analogy you want to put in that place, I always knew I was doing it for something else. but I didn't know what that was at the time. And look, this is not the final thing it's going to happen in my life. I don't know what this year's going to hold. And everyone's like, what's 2024 going to look like for you? I'm like, I have no idea. I genuinely don't.
Just waiting for the opportunities to roll in.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what's going to happen. So, but when they do, I'm sure it can only go up. So we'll see. Anyway, that's enough of my answer.
To summarize that, because you mentioned a lot of things. So my understanding, what you mentioned is first is discipline. To have a discipline.
Yeah.
And discipline comes comes with the mindset. So you can't have a discipline just one day morning and you just wake up and like, oh, I want to have discipline. No, that's not possible. But then the other thing that you mentioned is that have an open mind, being open, which means that yes, you have an aim, but you don't have a set target. You do have an aim. You know roughly where you want to go, but then you sort of like I don't know where it's gonna stop. Which means that you're valuing journey more than the target. Which means that makes it interesting rather than because if I knew I'm gonna die tomorrow, if I knew that's gonna happen, I would not be enjoying today. Okay. But because I don't know whether I'm going to live tomorrow or not, I'm enjoying today and tomorrow and the next day. Okay, which is part of the journey.
Yeah.
Okay, that's part of it. But you have a discipline that but with that discipline, I know that I'm living a healthy life. For instance, so I'm going to have a good life. If something happens, then it's out of my. That's a faith. Okay?
Yeah, discipline is an interesting one. I think I heard a definition of discipline. It was like. Discipline is doing something you don't like doing it, discipline is doing something you don't like, but doing it like you love it. And there was another saying, or it was another analogy that someone made, which I think really resonated with me, and it was essentially that you don't know the power of the wind if you're laying on the ground, right? You only know the power of the wind when you're walking against the wind, right? And it goes with discipline and just anything hard in life because you don't know the strength of discipline and how hard discipline is and how hard it is to, go to the gym when you don't want to. It's fine to go when you want to, when you feel motivated, when you watch a video. That's not what counts. That's not what grows your brain. It's that day when you hate the idea of going to it and yet you still go. And you probably do really bad. You probably don't have a good workout. You don't, it's probably what you don't set a PR and you kind of hate it the whole time. And maybe you get home and you're like, damn, I hated that I went. It doesn't matter, right? You still went and that's discipline. It's when you hate it and you still do it. And it's the same with the diets and it's the same with, saving money. And you're not going to enjoy it, but that's the point. You're not supposed to.
I think that's the problem with these days is because of instant gratification.
Yeah.
Nobody has learned to delay their gratification, which I think that is the difficulty. And I think we've all felt vulnerable to that is we do something and we go, okay, where's my reward? I want a reward so I can continue to keep doing the same thing. And yeah, I definitely resonate with that gym analogy.
Yeah.
There was
tough.
a quote, and I don't remember exactly. I mean, I'd like to go back but say, but the context of it was like everything that is good for you is difficult to do. Okay, so if you wake up every day and you try to do the difficult thing, okay, you're doing it right for yourself.
Yeah.
Eating healthy food is difficult. Going to the gym when you don't want it is difficult. Sleeping on the right time is difficult. Studying is difficult. It's not easy. All these things. Being a good person these days is sometimes difficult as well. Doing the right thing is difficult. Okay, forgiving is difficult. Moving forward is difficult. So if you focus on doing the right thing and doing the difficult thing, which means that you're on the right path.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you guys need to answer the question.
We did answer the question. Well, what you were answering anyway.
We sort of took a different approach.
Okay. You know what?
Well,
I
thought-
genuinely
but
think.
I thought that every person is answering a different question.
Yeah, no. So I was just gonna start with mine.
Yeah.
And then if you guys had anything to add,
Yeah,
you
sure.
can. And I think you did. So the question was, just as a reminder, it's comparing yourself to how you were yesterday. How do you personally measure your growth and success? Have you? And I think Mark, I just thought of something for you as an extension to that. Obviously, you're an entrepreneur and you've been going on this journey of becoming an entrepreneur. How long ago did you start your journey? Like, when did you start the company? I think you were telling me 5 years.
This company is about 5 years.
5 years.
But this journey is probably, trying to become an entrepreneur is probably 12, 13 years.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Have you? So let's say 2 years down the track, you know, imagine if you set yourself a 10-year goal. Do you think you've achieved your goal, or do you think you've exceeded your expectations?
I've already achieved more than what I was expecting in my life, and I'm very grateful for it. I would not think about it like when I was 15. I'm a dreamer. I do visualize things, and I love it. Okay. I could not imagine my 15 years old down the track, 10 years, 15 years, sitting here and doing what I'm doing. I was targeting totally different things in my life. But the line wasn't a straight line for me, and I don't think it's going to be a straight line for anyone. And that's the beauty of it. Am I moving forward every day that I'm waking up? Am I moving forward or not? Because if you compare a lot of like my age with a lot of people, then compared to people that are in my age, if you just comparing in a ordinary measuring, style, I'm probably really behind them. Okay. And so if I was sort of like comparing myself to a lot of them, like, because when I was sort of like 25, 26, I was like, oh, I want to buy a house, I want to buy this, blah, blah, I want to be married by this age, have children, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't really know that, I want to actually take those are good things. I would like to have them, but they were not my priority at the time. I would love to have them, but I'm like, the life is a balance. Okay, I want to have them, but I want to have other things as well. Okay, so like maybe, I go around. Part of it, I think, is also the nature. I could not have them at that age. Let's face it. And I'm not regretting it. And I trust the journey. That's how...
Trusting the journey.
Trusting the journey. Trusting that I'm going to make mistakes, but those mistakes are not that big that going to ruin my life. So there are people around me that can tell me that, you probably can do it, a different way.
Yeah.
And I've known a lot of people, and I've eliminated a lot of people from my life, not because they were bad people, but they were just, the advice that they were giving me wasn't right for me. Okay. And everyone is on a different path. But as you go and practice discipline, you practice consciousness, you practice conscious decision making, all those things. I don't know, nature puts right people in front of you, the right advisors, right mentors, and they can tell you whether you are every day you're doing the right or you're doing it right. And by the way, there are days that I just cannot wake up from the bed. I'm just too tired. There are days that I have to work, and I do work up to 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I can't make a routine of my sleeping. Okay, these are the back end of the story. So the reason I'm sharing this is because the journey to success is that you take adventurous journeys that you don't know what the result is, and that's the risk that you're going to take. Okay, so setting up disciplines in those journeys is difficult. Okay, so that's how I see it. You know, that's what I mean. And it could be, I mean, if you start comparing yourself with others, if I was going to start comparing myself to others, I would be absolutely depressed. But I don't, because the things that I achieved compared to others, it's not measurable, you know. And that's how I think this society and life is actually moving forward, rather than a set a set of goals that everyone needs to follow. Then everyone will start looking at their own journey, how I'm going to do my through my journey, how I'm going to add value. Okay.
Yeah.
Because we are not going to do the same thing, all of us doing the same thing. Okay. We're going to learn about how we coordinate and collaborate with each other through this journey to help each other. And that's, for me, that's the success measure. The other thing that I'm really interested, if I can help anyone during the day, that's without any expectation that I'm going to get it back from that person or at all. That's the measure of success that I have, because I think I had the opportunity to contribute to something, and that help might be really small. Okay, that help, you know, I can't even, you know, say it, but this is about, you know, it just gives me a good feeling.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. I was recently listening to a podcast by Stephen Bartlett. He had a expert on stress on the podcast, and one of the things she said was that one of the key it was a surprising study that showed that one of the key things that reduces cortisol levels is gratitude in your life. But surprisingly, it wasn't gratitude. It wasn't feeling gratitude for what you have. It's actually receiving gratitude for others, which means when you give, you actually lower your own stress levels, and when you receive gratitude from others. But that's just an interesting point on what you said.
Yeah, correct. I mean, if you don't give, there is no space to receive.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
Absolutely.
Look, I mean, there are a lot of things, a lot of problems in my life that I can't solve them. I need others to come and help me to solve them. And I believe there are a lot of problems that in others' life that they can't solve it, but I probably can help to actually solve it. And that's how the society works.
Absolutely. It's not just you.
It's not just me.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, my turn.
Yeah.
No, I definitely, you know, I guess
We might have stolen all your answers, but
no. It's good. No, like I can definitely resonate with both of you in that regards, and I think, yeah, like listening to you speak, Mark, with the only thing that was coming into my head was just that mindset of comparing apples to apples, when in actuality, you know, the person that you're comparing to you'll be comparing your apples to their oranges, and in your head, you think, again, it goes to that saying where it's like you compare the tip of the iceberg, but you can never see what's underneath. And it was a wonderful discussion I had with one of my friends where, I remember, like before we became close, I would at that stage, you know, I saw what they were doing, and was really happy for them, but it made me feel so bad about myself, because I was thinking, you're my age, if not a little bit older, and you know, now they're a really close friend, and you know, I cherish that friendship that we have, but at the time it was sort of I didn't really know them to that extent, and I just saw everything from the outside, and I was like, what have you done to get to that, and why can't I do that the same? And there were so many people around me that would say, no, like, you know, or not comparing to that person, but in terms of whenever I would say, okay, like I'm not as far ahead in life as I want to be, I haven't achieved the goals that I want, they would say, no, like you're smart enough to achieve those goals, you know, you're in a way, like, I guess in our language it's sure. So you have that, you know, you're smart enough and you're wise enough to know it. To get there, you just need to do the right things. But because I was so aggressively comparing my life to everybody else, I didn't believe them. And sort of looking back at it now, I think about who I used to be, I guess 2-3 years ago compared to who I am now. It's a night and day difference. So I guess talking very briefly between the two comparisons is, before it was, the worst part about it was, I think, and a lot of people can resonate with this as well, social media. You go on Instagram, you go on Facebook, you go on YouTube, you see like kids that are 16 years old, or kids that are your age or a little bit older, driving around in Lamborghinis, and they've got the Rolexes and they've got the mansions, and you sort of go, why them? Why not me? What do I do? And you try and find the most aggressive get rich quick scheme. And you start like aggressively looking into it, and you're like, oh, how can I make a quick buck? But then on the flip side now, and with a lot of discussions that I've had with people that are doing well for themselves, a lot of podcasts, books, whatever is out there that I've read, it's so fascinating to think back then my idea of success was the outcome. And as you mentioned, Mark, that's what a lot of people think that success is. But just the vast majority of people, and the consensus that I got was, it's the journey. It's the journey that got them there, which makes them appreciate what they have a lot more. And it's the journey that teaches them those life skills. It's the journey that really puts it into their mind how lucky they are. Because a lot of people, when they've worked hard for that success, when they've worked hard for that monetary, for whatever success it is for them, they can appreciate it so much more, and they know how to, one, attain it again, if they were, God forbid, to lose it. And the second thing is, they never let it get to their heads. Whereas the ones that I've met that are, I guess, overnight successes, and they haven't really put the effort in or whatnot, they flaunt it, and they never know the true value of it until it's gone. And then they sit there and think, why the hell can I not make this again? And like for me personally, that comparison put me through such a dark time in my life. And that was because I didn't know how to compare my own successes and my own, I guess, journey. I would always sit there and reflect not on who I was yesterday. I would reflect on who someone else is the same day as me. And I think that's the worst thing to do. And it brings us through so much stress, anxiety, depression, and you tend to lose a lot of control in your life. But on the flip side now, sit there, journal. I'd say if you don't journal a day, journal once a week, once a month, and just put down, these are the things that I'm grateful for, and these are the successes that I've made that I think are truly valuable to my life. And then move ahead to the next time you journal, read back onto it, and you go, wow, I've actually achieved a little bit more. And it's like compounding that success and compounding that motivation, and you think back at it. And something that's just come into my head is, say for example, you and I, and the three of us, we see each other every week. So we are aware of the updates. We are aware of each other's lives. We follow along on a very close timeline. Say 6 months goes by between all of us, right? And then you do your own thing, Mark does his own thing, I do my own thing. Then we come back in 6 months' time. And the difference in our lives and the difference in the things that we've achieved will be so much greater. We're like, holy crap, I didn't, that's such a big difference to what you were doing 6 months ago. But that's because I hadn't seen you in 6 months. I hadn't kept track with what was going on. And I think that's what people need to do in their everyday life, is keep a journal, because those things that compound on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis, make the biggest results in the long run.
And you're saying that you keep a journal and it's really helped your life?
I've been pretty bad. And again, it falls to that thing where I sometimes find it a bit difficult to, walk against the wind. But again, no one's perfect. We're all human beings. And as Mark said, there are those days where, I guess for you to get up and not feel motivated and feel so tired, that shows the amount of things you're going through and what you should be proud of. Because in life, if everything was free, or not free. If everything was easy, then you're never going to get tired of it. But it's the bad things that are easy to do. And the harder things are the good things for you, as you said. And that's what really puts a strain on you. And over time, if you're able to acknowledge that and push through it, it gets you a lot further in life. And that's where, for me, I might miss a journal 1 week, but the next week, it actually gives me an opportunity to look back of who I was 2 weeks ago and what I achieved and who I am now, and appreciate that a bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Amazing.
It's very interesting. You pointed out very interesting concepts in human life in a very toned down language that people can understand. But I want to actually point that out because as humans, at least it's me, we understand a lot of meanings by its opposites. So we understand white by understanding black. Okay, so we sort of like understand these meanings by its opposite.
Yeah.
So you could not appreciate now what you're going through without actually experiencing the darkness.
Exactly.
So it's actually part of the internal journey, which a lot of people actually are afraid of going through it. It's actually experimenting your dark side. Okay, so if you so there again, if you could not control, so again, this is about coming back to Jordan Peterson. It's about they're asking him why it's important to be strong, and as this is personally, I've experienced it. So it's because if you're not as strong and someone bullies you and you don't sort of like hit back, it's not because you could and you didn't. It's because you were weak. You were not in the decision-making position. You didn't have any other choice.
Yeah, weak mentally and physically. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah. Or physically, yeah.
But if you're strong and with your strength, you decide not to hit back, which means you have a choice. But it also psychologically reduces the amount of conflicts that you're going to have in life. Because you making conscious decisions because you have choices. And it's part of being strong. And you cannot being strong without investigating your dark sides. Without actually knowing what your dark sides are. Okay, and observe them.
Yeah, interesting.
That's part of what you were mentioning is, but you have seen that and you've come out of it stronger, I believe. Because you know what you want in life now. And as you mentioned, as part of the journey.
Yeah, I guess thinking back about it now, there were a lot of indicators of that. I guess negative habits, which, I was very afraid of. I was very afraid of facing it, and I think that was one of the discussions that we had in one of our many episodes ago, where it was facing yourself and sitting there and having that conversation with yourself. And I think that is a big part of being able to reflect back and keeping track of your journey and successes and comparing yourself today to who you were yesterday. Is really sitting by yourself and facing who you are as an individual, and learning how to face your dark sides.
Yeah.
So I vividly remember and I so clearly remember going through that, and I was scared shitless. I was like, I have a feeling of what to expect. I just don't want to face it.
Yeah.
Whereas now I go, as much pain, like as much of pain that I had felt, as crap of a feeling as it was, I wouldn't change it for the world. I would go through that any day to have the understanding, to have the clarity, to have the maturity, and the feeling of contentness that I have now. Yes, there was a lot of sacrifices. I lost quite a lot, but I discovered who I was.
Yeah.
And funny enough, there was a session where going through that, again, it's important to be able to face it by yourself. And I recommend anybody, if they have the ability to do so, try and tackle your problems on your own. Because in any case, you know yourself better. But if you do find it to be a bit difficult, always get help. Because what's that saying? It's you can go fast alone, but you can go far together. And this relates very well with mental health. So I definitely think if you find it a bit difficult, reach out. There's lots of services available. But for me, there was an aspect of thing where I had to go, because of that journey, there was trauma therapy. So going there, and at the time I found it so stupid. And it was literally, okay, sit there and relive that moment. I'm like, but that's what I want to get away from. I don't want to relive that moment. I want you to teach me how to forget it. And the only way you can forget it is if you keep reliving it and if you accept that it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point when you say, I do want to move to the next question, but I really want to say, when you say, talk about therapy and everything like that, and you said, try to do it yourself, right? I think it's important to say that a therapist, it doesn't solve the problem for you. What they do is they help you do it yourself.
They give you a map, essentially.
Yes. And they try to see things in you that you've missed, and they make it aware for you. And they, as much as possible, they'll try to get you to do it yourself, because ultimately you're right. You do know yourself the best. And if you don't, it's like cheating at a test, right? They're not going to give you the answers because then you don't learn anything. They want you to experience that yourself. And
we were going to send subliminary messages, and you were talking about psychology and stuff. We were talking about depression, but you split out. So audience, know that we're tackling mental health.
Yeah,
so, we were not meant to do it, guys.
No.
But it's okay. So
right.
Just if you are still keep watching, is like we are. One of the targets that we have is actually talking about the mental health. So all these things that you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, mental health is everything comes in twos, and the other side of success is
mental health.
Yeah, I mean, mental health could be positive or negative, but I'm talking about negative in particular, because I think not just dealing with problems, but even getting to success is something that a lot of times you do go far together, but sometimes it's a lot of solidarity as well, becoming successful. And I think you got to be able to face yourself to be able to do that. Anyway,
100%.
But anyway, I'm going to move to the next question. So I'll ask you the next question. So now this is about responsibility and meaning. Okay. So Rule 7 states, pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. Can you share a time when you chose a difficult but meaningful path over an easy one? And how did this choice shape your understanding of responsibility and purpose?
Wow. Okay. Could you say that one more time?
Yeah, sure, of course. So obviously, so Rule 7 says, pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. So delayed gratification, that's what we talked about before. And the question is, can you share a time where you chose a difficult but meaningful path over one that was easy? And how did that choice shape your understanding of responsibility and purpose?
I'll be honest. I think I'm still on that journey of really learning to take the path that is right for me and not the path that is right because society says so. So I might potentially be on the lower end of the scale to ask, but I'd say in terms of that, I guess the comparison is I have many opportunities where I took the expedited path, thinking that was the fastest and the quickest way for me to get to where I want to be, and didn't give the right outcomes. But a time. I'd say the most recent one, which I'm still figuring out the specifics of it, is for me to, and again, I guess adding context to it, was at the end of last year, getting laid off from my, I guess, PAYG income producing job, and that was, I think at the time, it felt really crap. It felt really difficult. But having gone a little while now, I've learned to really appreciate it so much more. And with that, I think I've lowered the expectation, or I've lowered how important money is to me. Because I remember at the time, I was like, okay, I'm going to get a high paying job, and then I'll be able to save a lot more and life will be good. I get a high paying job and I spend more. And that was continuously me chasing the expedited path. Whereas now, again, I've taken the time and really thought about, there's so many opportunities out there, but for me and where I am in life, I think the better option is not to get another full-time job, because I'm still very young, and it's taking the concept of money.
I hope I'm not a bad influence in that. Eh?
No. So there's two ways to think about money comes and goes. There's one where you're like, I'll spend and it'll come back. And then there's the other one where it goes, and the way I think about it now is, I don't need that much money right now. I would rather live the journey and be in the moment and spend time with family, with my partner, and being in the podcast, being around everyone else and really bettering myself and learning from everybody else's journey, than to be stuck in a 9-to-5. And I guess for me, I've got one more year of studies, and having taken 2 years off to focus on making money and then going back to studies now, again, early days, but it feels so refreshing, because being in that job made me feel so old, because I was surrounded by 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, and how'd you go? Oh, my son's doing this and life problems this. Whereas going back to uni and being surrounded by people your age and the youth, you feel so young. You're like, I can achieve anything in life. And yeah, I think for me, the expedited path in this journey is to get a job, save up. But I think, and just sort of reflecting on the spot at the moment, it's sort of, I guess, putting myself away from the income production and allowing myself to sort of understand the true meaning of money has been so good. And moving forward from this, I think you have to sometimes, I forgot where I heard it, it's you have to take a step back to take 2 steps forward. Because sometimes you can take a step forward, but take 3 steps back. And that's what happened to me. I was trying to take 1 step forward, but I was taking 3 steps back. I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I was constantly pivoting to make the most money. And it goes back to the context. I was a door hinge. I was moving so much, but because I wasn't prioritizing the decisions that was right for me, and I was just looking at the expedited path. I was looking for the express train, but I kept hopping off the trains, and I would never get to my destination. It's a long-winded sort of answer to that, but yeah, at the moment, I think this is probably one of the first times I've done that.
Wow, I think that's a very good point you made that a lot of people can resonate with. In fact, when I was thinking of my answer to that question, it was actually very similar to yours. Yeah. So the hard decision I've had to make is, I was at that stage in my life about thinking about marriage and buying a house that Mark was in when he was 25 and he gave up on. I haven't given up on it yet.
Same. I did initially, but
so I'm at the stage where, I have to make money, for a wedding and for buying a house, things like that. And, I work a job which is quite flexible, that gives me a lot of energy at the end of the day, like I said before, and I have my weekends free. And I genuinely had to sit down and make a decision not to get a second job, because I knew that for me, that would be the best way to make extra money would be, work a second job somewhere, which I had the capacity to do. Instead, I've had to make the harder decision to pursue things like Dexa and this podcast and whatever else 2024 may hold, which won't pay anything initially.
Hopefully, a product development together.
Yeah, maybe.
Crossed.
So, which won't pay anything initially. But again, it's investing into the future. But you're doing it blind. There's no guarantee. You're not working for a paycheck in 2 weeks' time. That doesn't
It is
count.
not blind. It is not. Don't make a mistake. It is not blind. So even if you shorten the frame, okay, it looks like if you don't succeed, it looks like a failure. But if you look at it in a much bigger frame, nothing is a failure. You're learning from it. Because is it going to kill you? No. It's going to impact your family. Is it going to impact anything on your life? No, other than you're learning from it. Okay?
Yeah.
And it's a principle of agile that everyone is talking about. It's like quick failures. And it might not be, it's not a failure because part of it might not work, but you twist it and then you continue on that. They talk about, entrepreneurship, 90% of them do fail. Yes, 90% of entrepreneurship do fail, but that percentage that all of them, they keep going into that journey, they finally succeed.
They never give up.
They never give up.
Exactly.
That's the meaning of life.
Yeah.
Because you found out the meaning of life.
Yeah, which is what I'm saying. So that is not the expedited, but the
One thing I
harder,
could
more
argue is
meaningful
you
decision.
say those things that you're doing aren't paying, but it doesn't pay monetary, but
Yes.
it pays in experiences.
Exactly.
So it still pays.
Of course.
It's just not something that you can have tangible in your hand. But I feel like the value of it will prolong so much further in life.
Absolutely. And which is why I keep doing it. So, and I'm still loving it. So,
And
about you,
mentioned and you mentioned something before we start a podcast, because you said a lot of people don't trust what the young people say because they think they're not mature enough or whatever is that. I can say going back 40 years, 50 years ago, at 21, 22 years old, would have been married, having a child, blah, blah, blah. Today's, you're not married up until, 30, 32 or something like that. That age is just pushed up. I don't think anything but the young people are scared of trying things. Okay, they're scared of, making mistakes. Not big mistakes, obviously. Not the mistakes you can't actually reverse it. But I'm talking about day-to-day jobs, experiences. You go and experiment something. And you don't need to be a revolutionary to change everything. You need to learn the process. You need to learn the steps. But, you need to learn how to maybe fix things along the journey and how to make quick changes, how to make improvements. And that's, I think, the missing part. Because, the young generation comes in and says, I want to change everything. I'm like, no, you can't change everything. But
yeah, you have to focus.
You have to focus and say, okay, but with your energy, you can actually focus on something and make something better.
I think that's what crushes their dreams is
correct.
They have such big aspirations that they're not willing to pivot and they're not willing to have realistic expectations. It's realistic, like some people do have realistic expectations. They just don't set the right timelines for it. And they allow themselves to be beat down too quickly. So they go, I had this dream. I was so excited. The life shut me down. I'm never going to do it again. It's like, no, actually, just give it a different approach.
Yeah. I really like what you said about like expanding that time frame.
Yeah.
It's not a failure.
No.
It's what you learn from it. Yeah.
And if you think about it in the stock market and you invest and the stock goes down, you only lose when you sell.
Yeah, that's right.
Never sell.
You only fail when you give up.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, Mark, what's
what
your
was
answer?
the question?
So the question is essentially, what's a time in your life where you have had to choose? Actually, I don't think you need to answer this because you literally talked about it just before. You were saying,
I was just about saying, but repeat the question.
yeah,
I'll tell you.
It's a time in your life where you've chosen the longer and more meaningful path rather than the expedited one.
I
And what did you learn about
I
responsibility?
believe I've been always a long-term player. I'm not a short-term player. If it's a short game, I don't know. It's part of my nature. Don't really know. Probably the whole my life has been like that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
I was just I could not easily accept the things that I've been told. Don't know why, don't know how. I have to find the answer myself. I question things. And that's probably, and I do drive people crazy. Tell you that, including my family. I mean, I do not accept everything that they say. And they have accepted me. They thought that I'm stubborn, but I'm not actually stubborn. I'm actually really flexible. I just need to know the reason.
You need to be convinced.
I need to be convinced.
There has to be justification.
It has to be justification.
I think that's great. I think that's an amazing value to have.
It is a great value to have, I believe. It helped me a lot. Because if I'm convinced, then I truly believe in it. Okay? But if I'm not, then I try to find a way that why it's not like that. Okay? Then I go on about, I don't let it go. Like, what is the reason there?
Yeah.
And that reasoning helped me to become much more competent in solving problems.
Yeah.
Or try to find solutions. That's my quick answer.
Yeah, awesome.
Truly spoken like an entrepreneur.
That's right. All right.
Day to day.
We
living it.
All right, Mark, I need to ask you this question, okay? My life depends on it. Okay.
What's that?
The question is, all right. Rule 11 suggests, do not bother children when they are skateboarding, emphasizing the importance of learning through risk-taking and facing challenges. Reflecting on your own experience, how was facing adversity or taking risks contributed to your personal development or learning process?
Ooh. I have to tell you this story, and this is a story that I barely remember it myself, but this is a story that my mom actually told me, and a couple of, I think her cousin told me. So apparently I was a child. I was a 2-year-old child, and we were walking down park. And then it was my mom, dad, and a couple of other relatives. And I fell. And 2 years old, 2.5 or something like that. I was barely could walk or barely could actually stand and, do anything. So I was really little. Then I walked, and then everyone, for some reason, run towards me, try to, keep hold of me because I was sort of like a bit of a, dust here and there, and, it was hard ground and everything. And then they tell me that my father actually didn't let anyone to go and save me. And I was like, what a brutal man. And it was like, when I was younger, it was the question. But then the strategy was that I haven't been dead. They're observing me. Apparently I didn't even cry because I didn't see anyone coming saving me. It was like, that's it. I probably have to
Deal with it myself.
Deal with it myself, suck it up, start and move forward. But I had the confidence that they're actually watching me. That's the moral of the story, And I can tell a lot of that story through my life that I was alone, but I wasn't really alone. So I knew that I've been observed and watched, but I felt alone, and I had to be myself and deal with it. No one is there to actually come and help me. But I knew if I reach out, there are probably people. Which then I think naturally I've learned to take risks. I don't know my dad or my parents, because then my mom actually become more like my dad. She gets worried, she gets nervous, and all of that, like any other mom, I believe. But then she holds back a lot. It as a matter of fact, like, she let me go when I was 16. You know, to go live alone in a different country without actually knowing what's going to happen.
Wow.
So, and I think that was a build up to a story that somehow they saw the potential in me, that I was such a difficult person to convince for reasoning. I was like, maybe we should let him go. You know what I mean? But that's partially because of my upbringing, but also when you become a difficult person to convince and you need always reasoning, it somehow become I become observant about my environment. So as a matter of fact, I don't see myself as a really big risk taker, because I do calculate a lot of things. As a matter of fact, I calculate a lot of things. So, which helps me to actually understand that how much of a risk I'm actually taking. Is it going to take me my whole life? Or it's just, I'm going to lose a couple of bucks here or there,
But your risk tolerance would be
Correct.
higher.
Correct.
Because, but of course it's good to know.
Look,
much
I
risk
mean,
you're taking.
look at Elon Musk, for instance. I don't think that he's crazy. Or the risk. I mean, from an ordinary person perspective, he took huge risks, but I think it was all calculated. It was all. I mean, when you look at the whole journey of his life, it was all calculated, and I believe he has learned through that how to actually how to take risks. Again, part of that is the family influence and what I study. I love mathematics. That's purely makes you, logical. Always calculating things. But then after some time, when I started living alone, I really realized that also I need to let go of the math.
Okay.
And trust the journey, trust the faith. Okay, and always good will happen. At the end of the day, there is always a good thing. There's always good will happen, and only good survives. So you sort of like let go of it at some point. Not that you do illogical things, but you come to a balance. Because I remember also at some age in my life I become too logical, and it is too dangerous. And some of these people are mentioning that they were acting as a mentor around me. They were worried about me. Because being too logical also stops you from taking risks.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think the analogy that I was just thinking about while you were speaking about that as well, about this question, is that, being a risk taker or having a high risk tolerance is not bad, but you have to. I think movies and TV shows and stories has given this idea that, they say high risk, high reward, right? So they take the high reward and ignore what does high risk mean? It means that you're more likely to fail. And what people do is they take a high risk option, or they make a high risk decision once in their life, most people, and they fail. And they're so surprised by the failure that they never take high risks again, right? And I think, again, it goes back because they never calculated that risk. And what is failure? You only know failure until you failed a lot in your life. And again, you learn lessons from that as well. And it's like going to the gym is a very interesting analogy to make here. It's to be able to go to the gym consistently and build muscle. Initially, you have to love pain. You have to learn to love pain. That's the big thing with the gym, right?
So true.
But you go for 2 years, you don't think about the pain anymore. You genuinely do love the pain, and the pain means it's working, right? And I think people have to change that mindset of high risk, high reward. The outcome of high risk, high reward is failure. Just like the outcome of consistently going to the gym is pain. And you have to learn to love failure to be successful at taking high risks. You have to learn to bounce back and take another high risk, calculated, right? And make those decisions and keep moving forward in your life, than rather than being caught off by that failure, which, oh my goodness, but in the movies they also always succeed at the end. Why is it not happening for me? You know, I'm meant to make $1 billion of Bitcoin.
That fantasy world that they live in, that's and they correlate that with luck most of the time. So they think high risk, high reward, but then there is always consider an element of luck in there, and say, you know, everyone can be lucky and all of that. I'm like, yeah, but how many percent of people are really lucky? I'm one of the person, I don't believe in luck. Okay.
But you also don't want to be lucky.
You don't want to be lucky.
The problem with luck
Correct.
is, and Ali mentioned this earlier, is that you might become, you want to learn what failure is. Because the problem is with luck is that you become successful one time initially, and then when you fail, you don't know how to pick yourself back up because you never failed before.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
I wanted to quickly add into that one, where the way I see it, and you said, you know, what is failure? I sort of, for me, the way I perceive it is, you don't learn from failure, you learn from the pain and the mistakes. Failure is not learning from that mistake. Failure is continuing to do the same thing over and over again. And in terms of the analogy of the gym, is you go to exhaustion, you go to the threshold that your muscles can no longer, you let it rest for a day, and you go straight back to it. And then you continue tearing those muscle fibers up. And what happens is when you burn those fibers, they grow twice as strong. And that's in sense of life, is the only time you'll truly ever fail is if you don't learn from that mistake. If you keep making the same mistake again and again, but you won't be a failure if you make a mistake, because making a mistake is fine. Everyone makes a mistake, but it's a matter of learning from that. And I think that is the true meaning of success.
Yeah, I think you defined it well. I think I can even extend further to say, people are forced to learn and make mistakes up to the age of 18. That's because that's when high school finishes. Actually 16 now, because you can drop out of year 10, right? But school really forces you to fail, right? You have to fail to be good at school, and you learn in that process. And I think you can really correlate to see when people reach their peak in life is when they stop taking risks and they actually stop failing, right? Your peak is your last failure, if you think about it, because it's the last time you learned something, right? And you say, I've had enough. And I'm going to keep making easy decisions from now on where I'm guaranteed to succeed. It means you'll never go any higher than that point.
This is very interesting, because even though I say luck, that, you know, I'm not lucky, but I am lucky, just because every time I'm lucky is because I'm in the right place and I put myself in the right place, okay, by taking risks. Okay, but those risks are measured. So, you know, you, instead of taking a big risks, you're just breaking it down to much smaller risks, which means you're breaking down your journey. Okay, I mean, yes, everyone's, you know, instead of having a big goal, you're breaking down your goal to much a smaller goal. Okay, so is the fact is you still have that big goal and big target, but rather than a straight line, your journey goes on a tangent here and there. Okay, because you might not be lucky at one place, but all the other doors are open. So you're gonna try a different door, as long as you keep
Moving and not turn around and go back.
Correct, because you are still moving towards your big target. And the life actually taught me that the reason I said I just aim, I don't create target, is because when I'm looking back, I've always gained more than what I have imagined. And I see it as a luck. Okay. And it's because I'm sort of like, wow, I did not imagine that I could actually get here. I was like, wow.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that goes back to like fulfillment and happiness. And there's a really good quote, it's not a quote, there's a really good analysis done on the definition of happiness. And they defined happiness as the delta. Delta means like difference between your expectation and your reality. And the beauty of that definition is that happiness and fulfillment is not linked in any way to the reality of your life. The only difference is that your current reality is higher than what your expectation of reality is, and that goes back to being grateful, and setting correct expectations.
You were saying something.
I sort of, while you guys were speaking, just in my head, just because of how I am, an idea came into my head, and I think you guys would love to hear this. So the way that I was sort of visualizing, for some reason, I don't know. So when people talk, I start creating different concepts into my head. Mm-hmm. And the way that Mike was saying was the journey and luck and whatnot. Think of the domino effect, and what life is and the journey is you putting each individual domino in there. And obviously the end product is, how satisfying does it feel when you've got a whole massive line of dominoes and you push it over and everything just keeps knocking each other down. And those are the successes that you're completing. Those are successes you're achieving that keep flowing on and going on to the next success and the next success. Luck is, you don't have any of those dominoes. You have the first domino and you have the last domino. And that is the outcome. You push yours, but you haven't got anything in the journey. But somehow the wind blows too hard. An earthquake happens. Something pushes that last domino down. And you go, how the hell did that happen? I'll take it. I'll use it. I'll somewhat be grateful for it. I don't know how the hell that happened. But then you're like, okay, you don't truly know the value. But you know how difficult it is to put that singular domino. And also in terms of the successes and calculating failure. How shit would it feel if you've done a massive line of dominoes and you make a tiny mistake because you didn't calculate things wrong and your dominoes fall backwards? That's all your goals undone. But you know how amazing it feels to put those dominoes down and then just at the end, knock it all over.
Yeah, lining things up in your life.
Yeah.
And every failure, there's the lessons learned, and those are just domino pieces
Picking up those dominoes
that you'll apply somewhere else, and you'll try and try again, but you get it at the end.
I hope that didn't sound too dumb.
No. It is very interesting. This is a story that I don't really share with anyone, but
I'm going to share it with the whole world.
Yeah, it's about entrepreneurship and how people have a wrong image of entrepreneurship. Through these years, I've attended, a lot of mentorship classes, invitation to come to these events and all of that. So they say entrepreneurship is about when you can actually solve a big problem. That's how they motivate you. Is that when you can actually solve a big problem for a big company. That's not me.
I think it's mine.
That is yours. That's all right.
Do you want to get it?
That's it. Yeah. So recaptured from here, but this is when they talk about that when you can actually solve a big problem for a big company, that's where you get the big bucks, and they sell it as a entrepreneurship. Okay. I don't know, and every single person that actually worked with me, mentorship with me, all that, always pushing through that to me. I always was against it. Not against it. I was like, yeah, that's great, but how do you know that you're solving a big problem? And that's why when I still am, when you ask me what I do, that even though I like B2B businesses, I like B2C. I like the happy face on a single individual that I've done something for him, or we have done something for him or her. It's not out of gratitude or anything. It's because I'm learning about the problem at a very small scale. Okay, and then I can actually as you were talking about the domino. It's like, if I can understand this, then I can go one scale, larger, and then bigger, and then bigger, and then bigger. The problem is people forgot about the process. They all want to focus on a big problem and then get the big bucks and then get out, jump to the next one. Okay.
They miss the mark on the smaller problems.
They miss the mark on the small problems. Everyone wants to become a hero. No one wants to do the small things right. And that's the difference. That's a risk. That's a huge, and that's a long journey, because to actually go to do, I mean, if you're familiar with that, if you do B2C business type, is really difficult. It takes time. Okay, but also if you're looking at the market, Microsoft has a B2C product. Amazon, Google, all of these giant companies have a B2C, because even though the mentors and all of that talking about, selling yourself to solving a big problem for a big company, yeah, sure, if you could do it best. But when I see the success story of these big companies, they dealt with the client, direct clients, and they could make them happy. Okay, how world would be without your Microsoft Office?
Yeah.
Your Microsoft Excel.
Your Microsoft Excel.
Gotta love Excel.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How would look like? That's a huge risk. And that's where I learned myself through my entrepreneurship journey, is like, I want to focus on a smaller problem. Because if I can solve them, I can truly understand the smaller problem. And I can figure out that this problem actually is for a lot of other people. Then that's a real entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I think that's such a great closing segment. I think we've covered so many great topics in today's episode.
Yep.
And gone through so many, I guess, life experiences and things that I'm sure so many of our listeners can relate to and can resonate with, and hopefully learn quite a lot from our journey, because it's such a big thing for us to go through it, but it would mean so much more, the fact that we've sat here and talked about it, if someone could do it.